Do not be surprised, my brothers and sisters, if the world hates you. We know that we have passed from death to life because we love each other. Anyone who does not love remains in death. Anyone who hates a brother or sister is a murderer, and you know that no murderer has eternal life residing in him. This is how we know what love is. Jesus Christ laid down his life for us, and we ought to lay down our lives for our brothers and our sisters. Good morning.
Jim, just read whatever you want, okay? It was a setup. We're going to have a fireside chat this morning because I'm going to raise a question or more that I don't know the answer to, but I want you to consider with me because I think it's incredibly important. Before we do that, I want to reiterate what was mentioned about names of deacons. Those need to be presented by next Sunday. And as Terrell had mentioned, make sure that you approach the person that you would like to, whose name you would like to submit, and make sure that they're willing to do that they feel called to do that, et cetera, and then submit those names. That would be up by next Sunday. Elders and ministers have always given each other guff. That's just part of the way we show respect for one another. And when Terrell first became an elder, I was in Fort Gibson, and he came down there for a Sunday night live, I believe it was. And I walked up to him, shook his hand. The first thing I said to him is, I hear you've gone to the dark side. And now we've got, Don, how many years have you preached? 45? Okay. And now he's being drawn to the dark side. I tell you what, as a minister, I'm feeling pretty lonely right now. I'm excited about all of these things that are taking place. And I also want to mention, it's fireside chat. Can you feel the warmth? This technology is kind of a mixed blessing, but it's an incredible blessing when used properly, et cetera, because we're losing, as culture, especially younger, we're losing our ability to imagine, and we're depending more and more on what we can see. And that can be very helpful. You know, back in the old days, we used flanographs and things like that to try to teach, but sometimes visual is very helpful to learning. Sometimes it gets in the way of our imagining, but we're going to try to use those together. So this morning, I want to use a graphic that I want you to concentrate on. In fact, you're going to see it through this whole presentation. But saying that to say, if you can help the Andersons with putting our worship on video together, please do that, because we're more and more dependent on that. You know, it's so helpful to have the hymns up there, and it's helpful to have presentations like this up there. And it's it just takes some time and willingness. And if you can do that, I would be very appreciative, because I depend on them very much to get to you kind of what I've put together. I had talked to a mortician in town, a good friend, about the possibility of bringing a coffin in here and putting it in here, because we're going to be talking about your funeral this morning. And we're going to, and if this notion or concept frightens you, then you really need to be a part of this. Guys, we have got to learn to be at peace with the fact that we're going to one day physically die. In fact, to a certain extent, I think anticipate it. In America, we deny these things very much, and that's to our own chagrin, really, because This is all part of God's amazing design for things. But there's going to come a time when you're going to either be in a coffin like this one, or you're going to be maybe in an urn. And very most probably in a time like that, you're going to be in an assembly kind of like this one that you're being seen. It may take place here, it may take place chapel in a funeral home, it may take place, but it's going to take place. And there are going to be people who are going to come together to memorialize you. And what they're going to do is they're going to reflect on your life. And the number one question in everybody's mind is going to be your eternity, because you have now entered into eternity. And their number one question that it's either going to be addressed in that discussion or it's going to be ignored in that discussion. If it's ignored in that discussion, it's been addressed. Okay? And it's incredibly important. Now understand, by the time you are in or your body is in a memorial service like that, your eternity is established. And I want you to know some things about that. And that's, guys, I'm going to keep this image of this coffin before you through this message, because I want you to confront the reality, the inevitability of your own death. Because it's incredibly important, obviously, that we be ready for that. And I will guarantee you this. There is an incredible likelihood that it's going to come before you're ready for it to come. And that should be a very awakening notion for us. I have presided at scores of funerals for families with no religious association. I'm going to tell you about one that I did about a couple of weeks ago. A woman called me about her sister who had died. And this thing was remarkable in a lot of different ways, because I had talked to the mortician, and the mortician called and asked, could you do a funeral? This family has no religion. They have no church. They do not have a minister. Could you do that? And I absolutely understand funerals are hard to do. And many ministers kind of avoid them if at all possible, because there's just so much to it, and it's very emotionally draining and all of that. I consider that kind of a situation a ministry. And I want you to understand that it's kind of like in the old Westerns. When someone died out on the prairie, you would have those cowhands standing around this mound of dirt where they buried him, and somebody will say, somebody needs to say something. And I think that's true. I think everybody that dies has a right to have someone say something, all right? Now, I don't mind doing that. In fact, I want you to know I don't charge a fee for any of that. I do that just as pro bono gift to the family. And it's an opportunity to talk to a family that I probably wouldn't get an opportunity any other way. But I have to take very seriously, as in the case of this one, this woman was not a Christian. She was not a disciple. She was not a follower of Christ. So you have to confront that thing, but that's not the issue. There were about 30 family members, and I've never seen this before. There were no visitors at this funeral. Now, that's a double tragedy, okay? And my heart went out to her family, and the family was very dysfunctional, a lot of stuff going on. But the sister, in talking to me and trying to find out some things about this woman who I had never met and didn't know, and how do you say things about, and that's sad in and of itself, that if the person who's going to stand there at the grave and talk about this person doesn't even know this person. And she asked me to do one thing. The obituary mentioned that on July 9th, whatever, so-and-so passed from this life, etc. She said, would you read that? Would you change that and read, passed from this life into the arms of Jesus? Now I have a problem. Okay? And let me give you a little bit of a preview, guys. The default setting on life is lost. All right? We can't assume anybody's saved unless we have evidence to that extent. You understand what I'm saying? That I can't go in there and say that this woman went into the arms of Jesus. Okay? That's a judgment. And you need to understand this, and I understand that families want comfort and they want all kinds of things. They want closure, etc. But there are 25 or 30 folks who do not believe in God, that if I set that precedent, I've basically told them, you're okay. Don't worry about it. And by the way, guys, if you go to funerals, everybody's going to heaven, aren't they? If you listen to what's said. Okay. You've never heard, Joe, bless his heart, we're going to miss him in heaven. We all know how he lived, and, you don't hear that. And I believe that's because folks are looking for solace. They're looking for comfort. We understand that as ministers. But understand, I have also presided at funerals of saints of incredible dedication, whose dedication to Christ is universally understood. I want you to understand those two funeral messages are relatively easy. All right? Because you know the situation. Everybody knows the situation. The question is, how are you going to address it? What are you going to say about it? The toughest ones are the ones that are kind of in between. What's tough are followers who are not disciples. Now, I'm going to explain what that means in a moment, but I want to ask this question. Are there gray areas in discipleship? What I mean by that is there between the person who has no relationship, family has no relationship, has never been to church, has never professed Jesus, between that and the person who is absolutely, totally dedicated to the extent that everybody knows that about them, are there gray areas in between? Now, I think in most people's minds, yes, there are. And in fact, as we go through this, and remember, we're talking about your funeral. What is the man standing in front going to say about you? And that's the question that I want you to understand. Who is a disciple? Who is saved? And at that point, being able to acknowledge that this person is going to heaven without a reasonable doubt. That's a profound statement when the default is all have sinned and fallen short of the glory of God. So we can't default to everybody's going to go to heaven. We default to everybody's lost unless we see in them the fruit of discipleship. Now understand, I want to say this about this whole message. I don't judge anybody, but we are to inspect fruit. We can determine the difference between a disciple and someone who's not a disciple. All right? And that's the challenge that we're facing here. And that's the challenge of the person who is going to preside at your funeral when you're in the coffin or you're in the urn. But understand that each funeral sets a precedent in the minds of somebody there. Because if you say this person is saved, then this person becomes a standard that I can compare or contrast my life to. So if this person's life, and I've seen this person's life, and you've seen this person's life, and if that life is the minister's going to stand up there and say, this person is in the arms of Jesus, now you have given me a physical demonstration of a disciple. True? Yes. Do you understand the challenge? Because I wish you could preach some funerals. Because folks are expecting you to say, yeah, or nay, they're going to heaven. And the woman who said, if you will say into the arms of Jesus, I believe she believed, if I said it, that would make it true. It's kind of like you're not dead until the doctor pronounces you dead. And when the doctor pronounces you dead, now you're really dead. It makes it official. And I think we can thank the Catholics for that, for what's called last rites, extreme unction, and the fact that you have to die in the church to be on hallowed ground, which is the cemetery around the church and all of that. And the idea that a priest can come to you as you're dying and he can give you extreme unction and your sins are taken care of, so he can usher you into heaven regardless of how you have lived up to that point. And I think we have this idea, if the preacher says it, it's got to be true. If the preacher says it, that will make it true. And I think in that woman's heart, if I had done what she said and said that her sister died and went into the arms of Jesus, it would have been. And I think she would have found solace in that. But it would have been deception, wouldn't it? It would have been a lie. And I want to submit to you a theory that I have, that there are probably as many or more deceptions and lies presented at funerals as there are any other association of human beings getting together. Why? Because ministers are under the pressure to make people feel good. But I want you to understand my responsibility today and tomorrow. And if I have the honor of presiding at your funeral, my role is to get you to heaven. That's my role. And that means dealing with truth. That means dealing with reality. Okay, so anybody at this funeral where the preacher says, oh, we know Mabel is with God. Now, you have shown us that Mabel is an example of a disciple that we can follow. And I want us to give some parameters to that, and I want you to squirm in your seat a little bit. Like I said, I got a question for you that I can't answer. And I don't know that we would agree on an answer, but we need to confront the question. So at least a minimum of expectation of salvation is presented if we say this person is saved. Non-believers are exposed to eternity through funerals. When I preached to her family, I knew this is probably the only chance I'm going to have, or maybe any other minister will have, to talk to these 30 people about the significance of this coffin. And the significance of this coffin is this person has left this life and gone into eternity. That's worth considering. And even though they would like for me to determine what is this person lost or saved, what I do in a situation like that is present what God's criteria are. And then I ask the family, since you know this person, you tell me, are they in the arms of Jesus? Based upon what God said. You see, in doing that, I'm giving everybody there the same criteria. It's not my intent to preach this person into heaven. It's my intent to have all of us confront the reality of our own death and what comes after that, the judgment. Because it is appointed a man once to die, and then the judgment. So the default is all have sinned and fallen short of the glory of God. The default is wages of sin is death. If you sin, you die. Everybody sins. Everybody dies. That's the default. There's something has to be done to interrupt that. And by the way, something has to be done to interrupt that, the fruit of which everybody can see. By their fruit, you will know them. Can't assume anybody's saved. I can't get up and pronounce judgment on someone, and to say somebody has gone to heaven is a judgment, just like saying they have gone to hell. That's not for me. What's for me is to acknowledge what God has taught, and to see from the fruit, is that what I have seen? And there are folks in this room, I wouldn't have a problem doing that. Because the fruit I have seen is so consistent and so powerful. And by their fruit, you will know them, and you won't have a question about them. So, can't assume anyone is saved. We need to be saved from danger and from death. God alone establishes how that's done, how we get saved. This is life or death, because one of these days it's going to be your funeral. And it's going to be sooner than you expect. And you need to be ready for that. And you need to be able to answer the question that's going to be on everybody's mind. Where is his eternity? Where is her eternity? And do we have security in that? Not because of what the preacher says, but because of the discipleship that they lived. It was evident in the fruit that we could see all over. If anyone comes to me and does not hate his own father and mother and wife and children and brothers and sisters, yea, even his own life, he cannot be my disciple. Whoever does not carry his own cross and come after me cannot be my disciple. For which one of you, when he wants to build a tower, does not first sit down and calculate the cost to see if he has enough to complete it? Otherwise, when he's laid a foundation, he's not able to finish it. All who observe it begin to ridicule him, saying, this man began to build and was not able to finish. Or what king, when he set out to meet another king in battle, does not first sit down and take counsel whether he is strong enough with 10,000 men to encounter the one coming against him with 20,000 men? Or else, while the one is still far away, he sends a delegation and asks for terms of peace. So therefore, no one of you can be my disciple who does not give up all his possessions. We better know what that means. We better know what our cross is. We better know what laying down our life means. Because that's the criteria of being a disciple, and the disciples is the criteria for being saved. So therefore, none of you can be my disciple who does not give up all of his possessions. Therefore, salt is good. But if salt has become tasteless, with what will it be seasoned? It is useless either for the soil, for the manure pile. Salt can lose its saltiness. Disciples can lose their discipleness. It's not once baptized, always saved. It's not once I go to church, I'm good. It's the cost of disciples. And my concern is, guys, and I'm just being honest, I'm just having a fireside discussion with you. I believe we've dumbed down the notion to give people, the family of people who are dead, false security and false hope. So it's your funeral. What's the guy going to say? Is he going to avoid the issue of your eternity when that's what it's all about? Because that's where you are right now? Because he's unsure? Is he going to offer your family a false sense of security by assuming you're in the arms of Christ when your fruit is questionable? When your fruit is inconsistent? Or when your fruit's not obvious? It's your funeral. What's he going to say? So what's the distinguisher? Attending assemblies is not an indicator of spirituality. Can we agree with that? The idea you can sit in a hen house and that doesn't make you a hen. It's not about your location. It's not about where you hang out. It's about what you live, what you follow. More than that, what you lay your life down and take up your cross. You better know what your cross is. You better know what your cross looks like. Because Jesus said if you don't take that up, you cannot be my disciple. You can call yourself whatever you want to, but you're not a disciple. And if the man at your funeral says you are, he's a liar. Because Jesus said you're not. So what distinguishes it? Well, it's not where we show up. But avoiding assemblies is an indicator of an absent heart. See, what I'm saying is, the fact that you're here doesn't tell me you're a disciple. The fact that you're consistently not here does tell me you're not a disciple. Because Hebrews 10 talks about what disciples do, that we spur one another on to love and good works, and we assemble together to encourage one another. We have a responsibility to one another. Anybody that doesn't do that can't be a disciple. But I can't assume because they're here, they're a disciple. What is the man going to say at your funeral? So, Fred attends assemblies on Easter and Christmas. Is he a disciple? See, I'm asking you the question because I have my answer, and I think yours will change. In my past in the church, we've always laughed about the folks that, you know, the preacher that says at Christmas, see you next Easter, or says at Easter, see you next Christmas, you know. and we understand what that's saying. But my question to you is, does that even meet, if there's such a thing, does it meet the minimal daily requirement of being a disciple, Easter and Christmas? When those 2 days don't exist. There's no such thing as those, biblically. So Fred attends assemblies on Easter and Christmas. You're going to speak at his funeral. What are you going to say? Let's bring it up again. Margaret is present about 25% of assemblies. Now remember, assemblies don't tell us about your discipleship, where failure of assemblies does show us about your lack of discipleship. And this is just very basic. We're not talking about devotion. We're not talking about service. We're not talking about taking up our cross. We're talking about showing up, okay? Margaret's present about 25%. That's about once a month. Would you preach her into heaven? Would you say that we know Margaret left this life and went into the arms of Jesus? Would you say that? Do you believe that? James is at every Sunday morning assembly only. Doesn't go to class, got no fellowship, no acts of service. You don't see any other fruit except every Sunday he's there. Now, this one's bold, because not long ago I got called on to do one of these at a man from my past, and I knew his life and I knew his fruit. But I'm going to tell you what, for Sunday morning, he was dedicated. What do I say? What would you say? How does that compare with take up your cross? How does that compare with unless you give up everything, unless you give up your family, you can't be my disciple? How does that compare? You see, what I'm doing is I'm bringing this closer and closer, but it's somewhere you're going to draw a line and you're going to say, now everybody up to that's not a disciple, but everybody after that's a disciple. And if you're going to tell that to a group of people, they're going to believe that that's gospel. Because if you say that about James or Margaret or Fred, those who are at that assembly who may never even go to church are going to learn from you that that's the definition of a disciple. Do you see the problem? So my question to you is, what would you say at their funeral? And what's the guy going to say at your funeral? The coffin's for you. Sandra attends class and assembly every Sunday morning, but no other. Is she in good standing? Is she a disciple? Here's what I want you to understand. I believe, and this is my heart of hearts, I'm having a fireside chat with you. I believe in my heart of hearts, she will be accepted as good standing in just about every church. In other words, she now has become the definition of a disciple. Is that true? I would suggest to you that just dumbed down the notion of a disciple. I can't take that and compare it with what Jesus said and make the math work. What would you say at their funeral? What would you show everybody there about the definition of a disciple? A disciple is not above his teacher, nor a slave above his master. It is enough for the disciple that he becomes as his teacher, and the slave as his master. So therefore, no one can be my disciple who does not give up all his possessions. We better know what that means. Because if we're here this morning and we haven't given up all of our possessions, if we are here this morning and that's the statement of our discipleship, we're deceiving ourselves. And we're deceiving one another. And for a preacher to get up on that person's funeral and say they are a disciple is to discredit what Jesus did on the cross and what it cost him to do that. Brothers and sisters, we get one chance. You got one funeral coming. We better get this straight. We better get this right. And that's my job. Beware of the false prophets who come to you in sheep's clothing, but inwardly are ravenous wolves. You'll know them by their fruits. Grapes are not gathered from thorn bushes, nor figs from thistles, are they? Even so, every good tree bears good fruit, and the bad trees bear bad fruit. A good tree cannot produce bad fruit, nor a bad tree produce good fruit. Every tree that does not bear good fruit is cut down and thrown into the fire. So then, you will know them by their fruits. What does the world say about you? What do the brethren say about you? What do those who know you the best say about you? They are describing your fruit. And one day, somebody's going to have to get up and give an account before everybody that knows you about your life. And I know people want closure, and I know people want to feel good, and I know everybody wants a happy ending. So, preacher, if you'll just say, into the arms of Jesus, it'll be. We all want to feel good. But that's not what this is about. Whoever does not carry his own cross and come after me cannot be my disciple. Assembling is not a cross. If anything, assembling is a recharge. It's a motivation. It's a renewal. We get the benefits of it. It's worship service because of the cross. This is not our cross. Being here this morning and singing and praying and giving this is not our cross. We gather together to be infused with energy to bear our cross. Right? Somebody give me an amen or tell me, preacher, you're dumb. This is serious, guys. And I'm talking to you heart to heart about this. Because I may someday have to do your funeral. Or I may someday be blessed to do your funeral. Guys, there's funerals that I walk up to the pulpit. Inside, I'm shaking my head. There are funerals that I run to that pulpit because I can't wait to tell everybody about this disciple. But I don't write the story. They do. My role is to prepare you for that assessment. My role is to prepare you for that day. My role is to help you determine your own eternity. To encourage you into that, to spur you on like you do a horse in that. And I'm trying to do that. Do yourself and your family a favor. Because the greatest gift you can give your family is to die a disciple in the Lord. If you don't do that, there are no words of solace. There is no comfort. There's just the knowledge that eternity will swallow you up, regardless of what we say, regardless of what we deny, regardless of the deceptions that we share. The truth is evident, because by their fruits you will know. My job is to prepare you for that. That's what I wanted to talk with you about today. And in doing that, I want to present to you an opportunity right now to make sure your calling and election is sure, because one of these days, a coffin like that will hold your body, and your spirit will stand before God to give an account. My question, are you a disciple? Jesus gave us criteria. Does that describe you? If not, rewrite your funeral message right now. Can we help you do that? Come as we stand and sing, would you?
No longer to linger, charmed by the world's delight, things that are